Hi, my name is Bente, I'm the Norse Witch, and today I would like to talk to you about something that you've been asking me and also other practitioners all the time, and I totally get it because it's not that easy. And the question is, how the heck do I advance my practice? How do I get to the next level? Because of course, a lot of the times we want to get better at what we're doing, especially if we are very, very passionate about what we're doing. So we don't want to get stuck on one level, we want to get better at what we're doing. Before I get into the tips that I have for you though, I would like to address, first of all, that what an advanced practice is very, very personal to every single practitioner, because it depends on where you started, what you're already doing, what you're lacking. There's no one-size-fits-all solution or answer to this. I already got into that a little bit in another video where I discussed the question of what even is an advanced practice, because that will also look different for every single practitioner. A green witch will probably think about an advanced practice in a different way than a ceremonial magician. This will look different for every single person. The only thing that I can do is tell you about the things that I personally changed in my craft that brought my practice to another level. So that is what I'm doing today. I can only talk from a personal experience. I will give you tips on the things that I changed and where I definitely felt like, okay, this is something that really changed my practice. This is something where I deepened my craft or where I got better at something. I guess let's get into the tips that I have for you. Alright, so the first thing I would say is master the basics. That sounds like such an easy thing to do, and you probably think, oh, I already know the basics, I'm already very good at that. But honestly, until I really mastered the basics, it took me like 4 or 5 years. So it's not enough to, I don't know, just read Psychic Witch by Matt Oren, do some of the exercises and think you're great at it, and that's about it. Of course, it's possible that you're very talented, but you can always get better at that. And in my personal opinion, if you're not good at the basics, you can't advance in anything else because you're lacking the basics. So what do you really want to achieve if you don't know the basics properly? So mastering the basics, very important. I made a video on that where I explain how I personally see how magic works and how I do that and everything like that. So if you want to check that out, it's up here. But yeah, what does that mean? I personally see this in 3 points. So, first of all, understand the theoretical background. What do you believe? What do you personally believe is magic, is energy? How do you personally believe it works? How theoretically does magic work for you? Because if you're not clear about that, if you don't even know what the background is of the things that you're doing, how is it supposed to work? Knowing how you personally see the theoretical background of how magic works and energy works, that will help you also realize which techniques can work for you and which don't. Because they don't all work on the same theory, you know? Your practical approach has to work with your theory. So get clear about what you personally think is the theoretical background. How does energy work? How does magic work? And what can you do to manipulate that energy? And that is where we get into point 2, energy, perception, and manipulation. It will definitely be much, much harder for you to cast spells, to perceive spirits, and anything like that if you don't know how to perceive energy and how to manipulate energy. So that is like basic groundwork. But also in my personal practice, my clairsenses are quite important because I do work a lot with spirits and I'm personally not too talented with it. So figuring out which of my clairsenses works best for me and kind of working with that and realizing how I can use that for my own benefit, that was very important to me. And once I figured out, all right, I don't have to do everything by visualization if I'm not too good at that. I can swap that out with feeling the energy, which works much better for me. Once I did that, that brought my practice to a whole other level. Okay, next up, we have mastered the basics, that's great, but now we're getting into writing spells. I personally believe that you cannot really be that advanced if you don't write your own spells. Because once you are able to write your own spells, that shows that you understand, 1, the technique, and the theory behind it. How even does all of this work? Why do I do all of this? It also shows that you know how to work with the techniques that you know, and it shows that you know your plants or your crystals or whatever material you use. It shows that you know your spirits. It just shows that you know the background. So I personally believe that learning how to write your own spells is insanely important. I also think, and this is something that kind of draws into that too, I personally think that the spell work, doesn't just start when you get to your altar and throw herbs together. I think the spell already starts when you're writing the spell. When you're writing it, when you're preparing it, when you're thinking about the things that you want to do, when you're writing the charms, when you're harvesting the herbs that you need. In my personal experience, all of that has a say in how the spell will work out. And if you don't write the spell yourself, something is missing. The same as if you don't harvest the herbs yourself. Not saying that you always have to do it, of course, but every single thing that you do yourself when it comes to a spell will add another layer of importance and intention and energy to it. So same with gathering your own herbs. If you gather them yourself, there's so much that you can do to enhance this. You can gather it on a specific day, for example. Whereas if you just buy them, that goes missing. So understand that all of this is going into the spell, and not only the throwing together of ingredients and charging it and then hanging it somewhere in your house. The next point is something that I cannot stress enough. Challenge yourself. Even if you have a very nice practice that works for you, challenge yourself. Try something new. Try something that you've never tried before. Try something that you don't even think you will like. Just try it, because you will never know what happens. But this challenge could also be something like challenge yourself to go back to the basics. Challenge yourself to actually become very, very regular in your practice. Things like that. That is something that I constantly have to challenge myself with, because I am not good at practicing regularly. I haven't meditated a lot the past couple of months. That was a very big mistake, because if you don't really meditate, if you don't come back to yourself, if you don't center yourself, how are you supposed to perceive anything else if you don't even know where you are? And as I already said, if you cannot master the basics, if you cannot stick with the basics and practice the basics regularly, and I really struggle with that, then how are you supposed to advance if you struggle with that? So that is actually where we come to the sponsored part of this video, because I'm once again collabing with Aura, which makes me very, very happy. Aura is great, and it has really, really helped me to get back to my regular meditation practice. Very, very important. I should just stick with it all the time and do their challenges and programs. They're great. So let us hear from sponsor Bente. Aura is a mindfulness and sleep app that has won the Best of Apple award and is currently used by over 7 million people. It's a great all-in-one app for your sleep and well-being, with thousands of meditations, sleep stories, and so much more, like cognitive behavioral therapy, life coaching, and even breathwork. Aura's content is created by hundreds of expert coaches and therapists around the world. Its content is highly customizable, notifying you about content that has been picked specifically for you every single day. You can also create playlists of your favorite content and work on mood trackers and gratitude journals, which is a great way to track your results. At the moment, I use Aura's challenges and programs the most, because they help me stay on track with my daily meditations while also getting better at meditating every single day. Aura is basically like a Spotify for your mind and soul. Unlike on traditional apps that only give you a few coaches in a one-size-fits-all package, on Aura it is very, very easy to find a guide that resonates with you. So if you struggle with meditating regularly, or if you want to enhance your meditation practice, then I challenge you to try it for 30 days. You can get started using Aura now, completely for free on Aura's website, by using my special link in the video description. The first 500 people using the link will get a free 7-day trial and also exclusive 25% off. Alright, next, stop relying so heavily on books and think for yourself. This kind of draws back to the last point, because spells are also in books. But this also applies to, for example, correspondence books, or techniques in books, or even theory in books. Don't just read books and then think everyone around you knows best. Try to figure out, for example, using your intuition, what works for you. What is the theory behind it that works for you? What are the correspondences that work for you? Stop just reading the correspondence books and then use those herbs. See how they actually grow in nature, where they grow, how they behave. Same with crystals. Read about the crystal or even experience it outside if you can, and then try to figure out what that means to you. There's so much to experience, and relying on books will make you kind of blind. You're relying totally on others to tell you what to do, while you have your own entire being, your intuition, your brain. You can do all of that by yourself. Of course, if you are a total beginner, that will be hard. But that's where the advancing comes in. If you want to advance, you have to think for yourself. You cannot just read books and then apply that. Everyone can do that. But if you want to advance and you start thinking for yourself, making up your own correspondences, coming up with your own techniques, or coming up with household items that you can use for a specific purpose in spell work, doing things like that shows that you are advanced, because you're thinking for yourself, you understand all of the principles around it. This is something that for me personally was so important. Getting away from most of the books. Nowadays, I don't even read a lot of witchcraft books anymore, because most of them are like, meh. It's kind of like, once you know, really know and understand the background and the energy at work and how to connect with the spirit of everything around you, you really stop relying so much on other people and books and stuff like that. And things that you read or hear from other people becomes more of an inspiration and less of something that you just take and use. Acknowledge the spirit and everything around you. Becoming a hardcore animist was very important for my practice, and not only becoming an animist and acknowledging the spirit, but also working with the spirit and everything. So for example, not only using herbs as an ingredient or crystals as an ingredient or anything else as an ingredient and just throwing it together, but actually connecting to the spirit of that thing. It was this shift from this, okay, this is a material to use, this is just a physical component. Yes, it has a spirit, but I will still use it as a material component in a spell, to this is a spirit, I will connect to the spirit, I will communicate with the spirit and see how we can work together. This shift was, for me personally, so insanely important. My spellcraft has been boosted manifold since I shifted my perspective with this. And also, for example, acknowledging local spirits. That opens up a whole new world of materials or things that you can do, because everything in that space will tie back. By the way, I'm petting a cat right here, that's why I'm moving so weirdly. Acknowledging this local spirit and how it affects the place opens up a whole new world, because there's so much you can do with that. Like even just getting into, for example, the dirt. Like acknowledging that the graveyard spirit, for example, is a thing, and that this graveyard spirit will have an effect on all of the plants that grow there, and the dirts, and the stones, and everything that is there, all of the other spirits that live there. That brings a whole new layer to things. Like all of a sudden, it's not just a bramble bush that you can use for bramble bushy things, but it's a bramble bush that grows on a graveyard. That's a whole new layer. And then it's a bramble bush that grows on a graveyard that has a graveyard spirit, that has a specific character, I would say. That brings also a whole new level to it. So acknowledging the spirits and things, it's so important. I actually don't understand how a magical practitioner does things when they are not an animist. If you are, like, explain to me, how does that work? Because I can't imagine. All right, after my camera has had some time to cool off because it was overheating, I have 2 more left for you. First of all, understand and become clear about which cosmology you work in, if you even do work in one. So for example, I am a heathen. I am a Norse pagan. So the cosmology I work in is all of that. And there is so much you can work with. Like all of that can change the way you look at things and the way you do things. This also applies not only if you are part of a specific religion, but also if you start practicing magic in a specific tradition that has some kind of cosmology or beliefs. This also applies if you get into a specific folk magic, because the folk magic of a specific culture always has some kind of cosmology. It has folklore around it. Like that's the core of it. Sometimes it's a very Christian cosmology. Sometimes it's more pagan in nature, so Scandinavian folk magic. I would say it's kind of 50-50, like a lot of things that are used and worked with seem still very, very pagan, but there are still some Christian elements in it. Become clear about that, because there is so much you can draw on if you become clear about what kind of cosmology you work in. So for example, because I am a Norse pagan, I charge things, and by the way, I already have a video up on kind of heathen things that I do as a witch, so how this cosmology applies to me. But yes, for example, one of those things would be that I use my breath to charge things, because that draws back to how Odin gave the breath of life, basically to Ask and Embla, the first two humans made of driftwood. So things like that, you know, that will change how you approach things. For example, also something I just recently got into, finally, because I was very scared of learning it, was learning how to write Ljósaháttr and also Galdralach charms. So now I will try to write most, if not all of them, like all of my charms, in either Ljósaháttr or Galdralach, because that is something that has been done in pre-Christian Scandinavia. It was very, very important, a very, very important part of magic and of poetry. So stuff like that is very, very important. But this also applies to, for example, if you get into the folk magic of a culture, or if you become a part of a religion, there's usually also rules on how to act. For example, if it is pre-Christian Scandinavian, like mine, then something that was very important back then was balance. Like neither giving nor receiving too much was very important. So kind of this gift giving was a very cultural thing, and having a balance, a good balance between what you give and what you receive was very important. So that is something, for example, that I apply in my spirit work. I try to not ask more than I give, and I also don't try to give offerings all the time without ever asking for something, because that feels kind of strange to me. So the cosmology that you work in, the tradition that you work in, it will very much change how you work. And for me personally, that has greatly altered my practice from being like your general eclectic neighborhood witch to actually my own personal practice. So for me that was extremely important, and I very much believe that that will happen to a lot of people. Once they kind of start to stick with one tradition or one culture, then your practice will change and it will become very niche. And that's really, really cool to see. I like that. Now, the last point that I wanted to tackle is having a bioregional practice. That is something that has very, very much changed my approach to my practice. I know it won't be for everyone, because not everyone is like this kind of green, nature-y vibe practitioner. Not everyone has to. But even if you're not, I mean, having a bioregional practice doesn't necessarily have to revolve around the plants around you. It can be around the local spirits around you. It can be about the animals. It can be around the stones. It can be around the buildings. There's so much that comes with it. I kind of believe that everyone will find something that works for them in their region. It can also be about the community. That's also a big thing. But for me personally, I really like working with plants. That's something that I really vibe with. Becoming very bioregional in that has very much changed the way I approach my work with plants. It has changed how I write my spells, because they themselves became very regional. So instead of, for example, I don't know, dumping something in my toilet, I will dump something at a crossroads, because now I know the crossroads spirit. You know, I know the spirits around me. I go visit them often, I'm very connected to them, so now like this spirit world around me feels very much like home. So I know whom I can go to with different things. I know I have like specific relationships with specific trees. So for example, I have an oak tree that is very important to me. I really like that tree. I go there all the time. So if I needed, for example, an acorn for a success spell or a money spell or something like that, or some of the wood for strength or sturdiness or something like that, I would go to that tree, because I know that spirit, So I would do that instead of buying some oak bark online, for example. That has added so many amazing layers of importance, of meaning, of energy to my own practice. And it's also just so fun getting to know what plants grow around you, getting to know the little stones around you. For example, for me, knowing that wherever I go, the earth is full of flintstone. That is such a cool random element, or just the history of the place where I live in. I don't know, it's just fun and it makes you feel like home, and it adds so many opportunities to the things that you can do. And for me, that has enhanced my practice so much. Also because sometimes for me, my practice can feel like it's something that is not too much tied into my normal life. Also because I can't really talk with a lot of people about my practice. For example, at work, nobody knows. So sometimes it feels like my witchcraft life and my normal day-to-day life are kind of separate. And having a more bioregional practice has changed that, because now when I go outside for a walk, I don't just go outside for a walk. I go outside and connect to the spirits around me, for example, or I observe what plants grow around me. I observe what's blooming at the moment, or I observe if a tree is now bearing fruit, or what the hazelnut bush around the corner is doing, you know? So it kind of feels like having a bioregional practice for me has really helped interweaving my mundane life and my witchcraft life. That might not be a problem for everyone, but I know some people definitely have that problem. So maybe becoming more bioregional will help you. For me personally, this also helped with all of the other things. Understanding the cosmology, because it ties back to the place I live. Acknowledging the spirit in everything. Thinking for myself, coming up with my own correspondences, things like that. Also becomes very, very necessary when you have a bioregional practice, because the books out there will not necessarily include all of the correspondences for all of the very niche plants that grow around you. So you will have to think for your own. A bioregional practice kind of brings it all together. At least it did for me. I really like that. Alright, but with that being said, those are all the tips I have for you. I really hope that these will help you advance your practice. I know a lot of people are constantly asking about it, so I thought I would just share what my experience with it was. And I know over the next couple of years, there will be even more things that will enhance and advance my practice. But for now, these are my tips. If you have specific tips, or if you want to share something that changed your practice and brought it to a whole other level, then definitely share them in the comments, because maybe I can learn something. And even if not, someone else will learn something. So let's share our tips. With that being said, Patreon and YouTube member shout out. Thank you so much to Maddie, Haley, Mordred, Ajit, Misty Sky, Sleeping Butterfly, Carrie, Eva, Roran, Tanya, Spider, Crow, Margot, Catherine, Roberto, Crimson Plant Nurse, Ellie, Petra, Lunafika, Jen, Maria, Katie, Saber, Pam, Mia, Victoria, Lindsay, The Other Saffron, Silent Selena, Richard, Jazz, Christiana, Sylvia, Katrina, V, Amanda, Derek, Kirsten, Andrew, Tisha, Sarah, Rowan, Isida, Shelby, Helena, Anne, Kate, Cade, Z, Kent, Brittany, Smokata, Josh, Elinura, Knar, Rixie Business, Ashley, Tim, John, Phoenix, Jenny, Amy, Bethany, Timothy, Coffee, or the Honorary Gossip Squirrel, and last but not least, Bjorn. And now, of course, let's also shout out my lovely YouTube members. Thank you so much to Christy Saurus, Runa, Peony Rain, Jen, Pat, Lindsay, Betsy, Miller, and KT. As always, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and give a thumbs up and ring the bell down below so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Feel free to check out my other socials, and if you want to support me, then check out my Patreon and my YouTube membership. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!